I think from the time we set out, when we set out to build ThirdLove before there was even the name, the goal was to build a brand for all women.
Hi everyone, thank you guys so much for coming. As Heidi said, I'm an investor in ThirdLove because I love the mission of the company. I'm about as normal as you can get, and I love a company that's really serving the needs of real women instead of some kind of male fantasy or archetype, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You know who I'm referring to. And every time you say words like figure or minimizing your risk, I can't help but think of bras in this location. We're going to talk a little bit about how this company started, some of the challenges of starting a company, which I'm sure a lot of you all are interested in, whether you're covering business or interested in kind of exploring a business on your own, because obviously this is a time of disruption in almost every industry. Sometimes I think it's head spinning, and other times I think there couldn't be a more exciting time for so many industries, and I'm excited to tell you what I'm up to as well. But Heidi, let's start with you and talk about ThirdLove, because the way the company started is so interesting, and kind of you had an aha moment, which you told me about when we had breakfast a number of months ago, that made you think nobody's really responding or serving the needs of real women and really giving them what they want. So tell us a little bit about that moment.
Yeah, so this is going back a while. At the time I was at Google, this is 2012, and I was bra shopping, and I did what I had done basically my entire life since I was probably 13, which was to go to a Victoria's Secret store in a mall. And this specific instance, when I walked in, and there's the music and the feathers and the really intense smell, and then there's the question of, am I going to interact with somebody and have an awkward fitting room experience, or am I just going to try on 20 bras? And I think I went that route, and then you end up sort of settling for something. But I took the bag, this shopping trip, and when I walked out, I took it and I stuffed it into the bag I was carrying, because I was so embarrassed to be shopping at this brand that seemed to represent everything that didn't represent me, right? And I went home that night and I was looking for other brands and what options were, and I realized there really wasn't. I mean, you're talking about 2012, also going way back in time. You have to keep in mind, D2C wasn't a term. D2C did not exist 7 years ago. And so,
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Crazy. And now you look across every category, to your point, all the disruption occurring. And so really it was like, there isn't anything. There's sort of the Victoria's Secret and the department stores, and each had their own pros and cons, and really it was like, how hard could it be to create a better bra and a better bra company?
And one of, I know that your main goals was fit. And we've heard a lot about how, hi guys, all the guys in the audience. Anyway, that so many women do not buy the correct bra. And that's something that really became a mission statement for your company. And how did you incorporate that into how you decided to run the business?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we encountered starting off, and I was the first one who realized if I did this, I think a lot of women did this, I was wearing the wrong bra size. So I'd spent my entire adult life wearing a size someone told me I was, and wondering why my bra didn't really fit. And for me, that was another aha moment. It's like, if we can't solve what I call the fit issue, meaning figuring out your size or the style that's right for your unique shape, you never can sell anything. You can't sell a bra online.
Right.
And so for us, that fit finder and that way of basically bringing the experienced bra fitter into the home of every woman through the fit finder was incredibly important.
When I think about the fit finder, I think about how much technology, how this is really the intersection of technology and service. And was it hard to figure out how to make this actually work? Because to not have a real, I'm sort of going like this, but not to have a real world experience and have a fitting and all that, how are you so precise when it comes to matching the technology with a woman's actual shape?
Yeah, well, it all started with an app. So a lot of people may not remember, but back in 2013, we had an app that used computer vision technology to help identify a woman's shape and size. And from there, we used a lot of that data to build out our Fit Finder in 2016. But in essence, if you've ever, how many women have been fit for a bra in a store by a bra fitter? Almost everyone, right? The really good bra fitters don't use a measuring tape. You know what they do is they come in and they look at you in the room and they basically size you up. They look at you and they understand sort of, do you have cup gaping? Are your straps slipping?
And they move a lot of stuff around.
They do as well. Make sure everything's in the right place. But that knowledge is, in essence, what they're looking for are all those things that we're asking about in the Fit Finder. So we basically took that in-store experience and digitized questions around that to get at the real fit issues and understand size.
Were you surprised that a company hadn't done that? Because sometimes, you know, a lot of people say, why didn't I think of that? But were you surprised that this industry had not been disrupted? And why do you think that's the case?
Well, specifically with bras, manufacturing is really, really hard, and Victoria's Secret has generally had a lockdown on the supply chain, so that's one major reason. And I think when you have one major player owning the vast majority of the market, there's less of an incentive to compete when you own it. So there was a lot of dynamics going on, I think, with the market.
And you guys were pretty much unabashed about taking on Victoria's Secret in a very overt way. Cheeky way. We're talking about lingerie, so everything sounds like lingerie to me. But tell me what made you decide that? Obviously, you had that moment where you were kind of embarrassed and thought there's got to be a better way. But you decided to really kind of embrace that and step into that full throttle.
Yeah.
And tell me about the thought process behind that and some of the advantages and potential risks of that strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the time we set out, when we set out to build ThirdLove before there was even the name, the goal was to build a brand for all women. And when we said all, we truly meant all. And by that I mean ethnicity, I mean size, I mean life stage, right? At anything, all women, we really wanted to build a brand that was really, really inclusive. And so certainly today, again, the notion of inclusivity and the demands that customers are placing on brands is here, right? It's getting higher and higher. When we started, there wasn't as much of that. And so we were one of the first brands to show models of different sizes, to show, you know, women over the age of 40 in advertising.
Thank you.
I'm 40 now, so, you know, I got like, you know, but I think that idea of, you know, really just showcasing real women, it was in some ways basic. So I think in some ways you're like, why haven't a lot of people been doing this? But again, it's sort of just people tend to continue to do what they're doing. But specifically with Victoria's Secret, we went a really long time without actually talking about them at all. I mean, from the time we started until last year, so the fall of 2018, we really didn't talk about Victoria's Secret. I mean, obviously they're the big competitor, but we were really heads down. Like, we built better product, we built more sizes, we have close to 70 half cups, how we chose to build our marketing.
Because I thought it was, I read on somewhere that 37% of women are actually half sizes, and yet bras aren't built for half sizes.
That's like right. Shoes. If you think about it, a lot of women tend to be in between. I mean, it's just natural with body shapes. And so we had really put our heads down and built the company, and when the whole thing happened with the Vogue article in Victoria's Secret, they had really kind of come out and talked about us publicly, and we ended up in their headline. And that was just a unique opportunity to say, okay, are we going to sit back and let them do that, or are we going to have a response? Because
so you felt like they were defining you?
Yeah, I mean, the headline of the article, which came from their CMO, their chief marketing officer, was, "We're nobody's third love, we're women's first love." And so when we woke up and saw that article, it was sort of like, okay, well, they're talking about us.
Right,
and
which was flattering on some level, I would think.
Flattering, and obviously we were on their radar at that point, right? And it was like, do we believe in what he said? Like, do we believe that women, you know, on a Sunday night want to spend an hour of their time watching, you know, a fashion show of you know, feathers and stiletto heels, and a lot of women who look like something that we may never feel like we can all achieve? And so it was like, we either let them say that, or we have a different view and we share that view with potentially the world through, you know, through the New York Times.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I used to see ads for that fashion show on CBS, and I was always surprised that they would still feature that fashion show on national television, and the message that that conveyed to women everywhere and to men everywhere, actually.
Yeah, totally.
When it comes to expanding sort of your business, I know you're doing sleepwear, loungewear, you're doing other things. I mean, do you see yourself going into different products as well? I mean, exercise gear, and when you think about things like that, what's your, sort of, how do you figure it out?
So that's a question that we talk about all the time at our board meetings and the like. And so it's really about the right time. Certainly we get requests from our customers for swimsuits, sports bras, more sleepwear. But again, we have millions of customers, but there's still millions of women who haven't heard of ThirdLove yet. And so I think we're really focused on bras and underwear and sleep for the short term, and eventually we'll get there.
How do you get the message out in this crowded media landscape? I know you are active on Instagram, you have a newsletter that goes out to your customers, but I mean, there's so much content and so much stuff out there. How do you break through?
I think it has to be really timely, and you have to really know your audience, right? Which is what you've done really well, is like connecting and really understanding what someone cares about and being really authentic, I think, with what you're talking about. Because I think people today, you can really see through that really, really quickly. And so we're constantly testing, though, and I'm going to ask you a few questions before the end here. She's not going to I knew she would try this. I would be like the end, and I wouldn't have asked any questions. But yeah, no, I think it's really about just putting some stuff out there and seeing if people engage. Like, do they care about this topic? Do we spark conversation? And if not, moving on. That's a benefit of social media, is the fact that you can just iterate off
and
that.
I think people are desperate for connection and community. As we're all so busy and time and life has sped up so much. I think there's something. That's why I love Instagram, because I feel like I have a community of people who are interested in talking about things, whether it's gun violence or other issues, or dahlias in my garden. It's just sort of fun to feel like that you have this interactive community, and I think that you all have really taken advantage of that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that ThirdLove community is strong, and our customer base is, I mean, the kind of notes I get from customers, it's just that connection about how we're impacting their lives, and that's really what we set out to do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to let you get off the hook,
okay.
but
all right.
Tell us, I think everyone here is probably familiar with Katie Couric Media, but tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea, what you're doing. Tell us about your newsletter, which I read every morning.
Thank you, Heidi.
And how you created that content and figured out what to put in there.
Well, I've been in television for TV news. I was in TV news for a very long time, and I had worked at NBC and CBS and ABC and then Yahoo News. I think Tim Armstrong was here, so we were sharing some funny stories about that. And I thought, again, this time of disruption, people are consuming news and information in a wholly new way. My daughters, who are 23 and 28, rarely turned the television on for news. That would have been blasphemy when I was younger, when everybody hopefully turned on the Today Show to find out what was happening. And now there's so many places to get news and information that, I think I saw a real sea change. And I've always been the kind of person who is excited about change and loves to evolve. And so I thought, how can I create my own content? How can I build a company? Which was a skill I'd never had as well, Heidi, and I'm 62, so starting a company at my age seems sort of insane. My husband, John, we've been married for 5 years, and he said, let me work with you because that's the only way I'll ever see you, because I'm a little bit of a workaholic. And I said, great, because he's an incredibly smart businessman, and that's unfortunately not my strong suit. I wish that I had taken more business courses. I think women should actually become much more knowledgeable in business and finance, because I think when you're not confident in those areas, it puts you at a disadvantage when you're dealing with business, and that's just a skill that I wish I had honed more when I was younger. So anyway, I just decided I want to be my own boss. I really love the idea of being able to make my own choices, what I was going to cover, where I was going to shine my lens. I have strong opinions about things like gun violence that I couldn't express if I were on a traditional news network. I'd have to stay totally mum about that. And so we thought, well, how are people getting their news and information? I read a lot of newsletters. Let's do a newsletter, something I did when I was at Yahoo. So we do something called Wake Up Call, which is in people's inboxes, and it curates the top stories and also offers readers original content, interviews with people who are doing interesting things. Like I profiled Heidi. I profile a lot of female entrepreneurs. We have an interview with Julia Stiles, who kind of has reemerged in this movie Hustlers after taking a break from the business, which I think we can all relate to, or a lot of people can, step back maybe when they have children and then they want to re-enter. And so it's just been really fun, and I have I've hired a lot of young, smart women who I want to help learn sort of the tricks of the trade when it comes to writing and journalism and podcasting, which I'm relaunching my podcast. I'm doing a couple of documentaries. I'm doing some digital series. And you're wondering, well, how do you pay for all of this, right? And the way we do is there's a real trend in the world right now where companies have to really want to express that they have values beyond the bottom line, beyond profits and pleasing their shareholders. They want to stand for something. And a couple of things are contributing to this trend. Millennials want to work for places where they feel have a higher purpose. And so for retention, just something as simple as retaining a workforce, you need to make it a good place to work, and people want to feel like they're contributing something to the world through their companies. And similarly, you'll see in things like the Edelman Trust Barometer or the Business Roundtable that you probably recently read about, companies, employees are looking to CEOs and their leadership to take a stand on some of these big issues, whether it's Nike taking a stand on Colin Kaepernick or Walmart taking a stand on concealed carry and magazine sales, the endless array of bullets that you can use to kill people, or ostensibly animals, but that's another topic. Anyway, so I saw these things converging, and I thought, how can I work with companies that care about things like criminal justice reform, gender equality, the environment, and tell stories that I care about, but get them to support them. So it's not branded content. It's content that is supported by brands. Kind of back in the day when you guys weren't even born, they had like TV shows that were brought to you by. I don't even want to mention them because I'll sound even more ancient than I am. So I thought, this is a way where I could contribute to the conversation, do really good work, and the content is editorially independent. I'm not doing product placement, but I'm talking about things that really matter to me and happen to matter to a lot of companies. So it's a whole new, exciting business model, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm learning a lot, and it gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of the kinds of stories that I think aren't being covered enough because a certain someone is just sucking all the oxygen out of the news cycle. And I don't necessarily want to be talking about the latest tweets or the latest drama in the West Wing or the musical chairs that are going on. I want to talk about, things that I think people really care about and things that I think really matter in the big picture. Thank you.
Do we have time for one more question? So I'll ask you one more question. If you could go back, people ask me this a lot, so I'm super curious what you would say. If you could go back and give yourself advice from earlier in your career, what's the one thing you would tell yourself?
I think at times I wish I had been a little more political. I'm not a particularly good office politics person, and I used to tell my daughters that they should suck up to their teachers a little bit, not because I just think that everyone's a human being, and people are, they like when you flatter them and when you're nice to them, and I've just always been a super direct person. I've seen people as colleagues, and I think probably I didn't really play the game that much. It didn't really hurt me ultimately, but I think I could have been a little more aware of that, sort of those dynamics. But I think when push comes to shove, I'm really proud of the choices I've made, the risks I've taken. You know, I always tell college, I do a lot of commencement addresses, I'm always like, take chances, take risks, you know, get out of your comfort zone. And, you know, sometimes when you do that, it's challenging and it's a lot harder than you anticipate. Mm-hmm. And I think that I often leapt before I looked. And I think maybe in hindsight, I might have done a little more due diligence to make sure the place that I was going was the right move for me. Does that make sense? Everyone's like, I don't know.
I love that. No. Well, thank you.
Well, let me ask you, since we'll end it on you, since this is your thing, Heidi. What do you wish you had done differently? Is there anything?
I mean, I think the biggest piece of advice I'd have, it goes well with today. It's like every day is a new day. And I think when you're in the moment, whether it's the high or the low, it feels like that's your world, right? Because it takes over.
Right.
And then you realize, as this happens many times over the course of your career, that it is important in their moments, but it's all part of like the broader journey and the story. And you're as you go along, I think it's very easy to get fixated on these different things.
Right.
And really what I've learned in the past 6 years at ThirdLove is like sometimes you just gotta roll with it, let it go, and you know, 6 months or a year later, it's a passing thing, either good or bad, right? I just think every moment is a moment to learn and appreciate the moment and learn from the moment, or enjoy the moment, and then just look ahead.
I think that's actually really interesting, because I think sometimes when you're in a business or a profession, you suddenly think like everybody in the world cares, and really nobody cares.
Totally.
And John's dad, Herbie, who's so great, is John told me this story about his friend Dave, and he was very upset. He was getting divorced. And he was so upset. What are people going to say? What are they going to think of me? Oh my God, this is so horrible. And Herbie said, pass the ketchup. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, that's what people are going to say. They don't care. Pass the ketchup.
So true.
So I do think that sometimes we get in our own way by thinking, by sort of exaggerating every little thing that happens to, and it gets all distorted and out of proportion.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's something to kind of remind yourself, like, pass the ketchup.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna start using that at ThirdLove.